Which did you think was the better work of art? While this question really is up to the individual interpretations, it's generally decided that Da Vinci's work is superior. Commercial art, however, tends to communicate directly to its audience. Communication. Now, there's another word that crops up in students' definition of art. But the question is, how does art communicate? Let's take a look at the model of communication and compare it to a model of the art process. For those of you who've taken interpersonal communication class, this model will look very familiar to you. Our model suggests that there are three basic factors in any communication. A sender sends a message to a receiver. Now, in this process, many things happen very quickly. First of all, the sender goes through the process of encoding a message. Encoding is the process of organizing the message for its own purposes. After this is done, a message is sent through a channel to a receiver. Now, the nature of this message has two parts, a text and a subtext. The text are the actual words used in the message. For instance, I'm walking across campus and I see you and I say, "How are you?" The words, "How are you?" are the text of my message. The subtext of a message is the meaning of the message. I may be using the text, "How are you?" but beneath it, I'm saying, "I acknowledge your existence." The text of the message is the surface for what psychologists refer to as social stroking. After the message has been encoded and sent, the receiver receives the message and goes through a process known as decoding. Decoding is the process of interpreting the message sent. Once the message is interpreted by the receiver or decoded, they engage in what is referred to as feedback. Feedback is the process of encoding and sending a new message based on the initial message sent. For example, I say to you, "How are you?" and you say, "Fine." In almost all cases, you'll respond by saying fine, no matter how you feel. And why is this? Because you successfully interpreted the subtext of my message. Even though the text of the message was, "How are you?" you understood that the subtext of my message was, "I acknowledge your existence." So in return, you encoded a new message that had the text, "Fine," but had the subtext, "I acknowledge your existence also." This was a successful communication. Why? Because the message was sent and interpreted correctly. Had I asked you, "How are you?" and you started to tell me about all of your problems, it would put me off. Because even though I asked you, "How are you?" in the text of my message, you misinterpreted the subtext and responded literally to the message. Additionally, if I had asked you, "How are you?" 2 days in a row and you didn't respond, I wouldn't ask you on the third day. Why? Not because I want to know how you are, but because I specifically acknowledged your existence so that you would acknowledge my existence. You didn't, so I won't either. Both of these previous examples demonstrate a failure to communicate. This is a simplification of the communication process, but its description is accurate enough to allow us to draw comparisons between the process of communication and the process of art. Now, let's compare the model of communication to this model of the art process. The processes are similar, so the models will look similar also. Like communication, the process of art involves three basic factors. Those are the artist, or the creator of the artwork, the art object, and the audience, or the interpreters of the art form. In the art process, the artist uses his technique or skills to create an object by using his particular medium. An artist's medium are the materials that he uses to create his particular art object. The object is created, and the audience interprets the object. Now, let's say that an artist has an instinct or a passion to create a work of art based on his feelings about man's struggle. And this artist uses his sculpting technique, and let's say that his medium is stone and chisel. He works on the stone until he creates a sculptor. He steps back from the sculptor and feels that his efforts have yielded his intentions. The sculptor is exhibited, and one audience member feels that the work reveals male dominance in American society. Another feels that it's a wonderful representation of the cyclical nature of life, but no one sees it as representing man's struggle. Since no one interpreted the work as the artist intended, does that mean that the artwork failed? The answer to this question is no. This is where art and communication part company. In communication, if we don't interpret a message as the sender intended, the communication has failed. If an audience member doesn't interpret a work of art as the artist intended, that doesn't mean the artwork failed. In fact, it may be desirable that so many different interpretations of an artwork takes place. A great work of art should transcend the artist. That is to say, that once the artwork is completed, it should belong to the audience member who is experiencing it. It no longer is a message that is being sent by the artist for accurate translation. The great American poet Walt Whitman once wrote a poem that stirred up a lot of discussion about its meaning. When Whitman was asked to clear up the controversy by revealing the meaning of the poem, he replied, "When I was writing that poem, only God and I knew what it meant. Now that it's written, only God knows." Most of the time, it is impossible for an artist to say what it was that his work of art meant or what it's about. Many times the artists themselves don't know. If they could explain a work of art, then there's probably no need to create the work of art in the first place. We create art because we are unable to use conventional means to express ourselves. We have these feelings and ideas and passions that go through our veins, and there's no other way to express them other than through art. As Halley, in Master Harold and the Boys, said, art is giving form to the formless. The artist expresses feelings and ideas and passions that he experiences and gives them form in an art object. The audience engages in the other part of Halley's definition of art, the giving of meaning to matter. It's this final personal experience that an audience member has that makes the art process complete. In our next section, we'll take a look at 3 categories of art and how theater art fits into the spectrum.